The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It came in slow, rhythmic sheets, a whisper on the roof, a soft percussion against the window panes, the kind of rain that made you listen. And that morning, Daniel Carter was listening. He stood by the kitchen window of their suburban home in Kirkland, Washington, coffee cooling in his hands, eyes tracing the faint reflection of his wife behind him. Emily moved quietly, too quietly, her steps soft, her movements deliberate, like she didn't want to wake something. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was the truth. "Are you working late again tonight?" he asked, voice casual. Emily didn't look up. "Probably. We've got that new client presentation on Friday, and Susan's been on my case about the visuals." Daniel nodded, watching her carefully. She used to look at him when she talked. Used to smile between sips of coffee, used to touch his arm just because. Lately, she avoided his gaze like it burned. He told himself it was stress. The design firm she worked for was going through layoffs. She was trying to hold on to her position, to stay ahead. He wanted to believe that. But belief felt heavier lately. Like lifting something that used to be light. When she left that morning, she kissed him on the cheek, quick, mechanical, and the faint scent of another man's cologne followed her out the door. Daniel Carter was 37, an engineer for a local tech company, a man of structure and habit. His life had always been built on predictable lines, project deadlines, commutes, the 6:30 dinner with Emily, Sunday hikes, Friday wine nights. The kind of life that looked clean from the outside, perfectly aligned. But lately, the lines didn't match. The routines cracked. And under those cracks, something dark pulsed. He didn't tell anyone. Not his brother Mark, who'd warned him once, "You two are living in autopilot, man, that's when bad things happen." Not his mother, who still called Emily, "my favorite daughter-in-law." He just waited. Watched. Tried to convince himself the silence in the house was normal. It started with little things. Her phone, always face down on the counter. A new lock code he didn't know. The late nights. The sudden obsession with her appearance, the gym after work, the perfume he hadn't smelled in years, the lingerie receipts buried in her purse. One night, when she thought he was asleep, Daniel saw the glow of her phone beneath the sheets. Her thumbs moved fast, tapping out messages, smiling faintly into the dark. He waited until her breathing slowed, then reached for the phone after she drifted off. Locked. He set it back gently and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Days passed, and the silence grew into a third presence in their home. They spoke less, touched less, pretended more. Then, on a Thursday evening, Daniel drove to Emily's office with takeout, her favorite Thai from the little spot on Main Street. He wanted to surprise her. He wanted to remind her. The building was mostly dark. Her car wasn't there. He sat in the parking lot, the plastic bags cooling beside him, watching the door. At 8:43 p.m., Emily texted him, "Still working. Don't wait up." He stared at the message until the words blurred. Then he started the car and drove, nowhere in particular, just following instinct. Rain streaked the windshield, the wipers clicking slow and steady. He turned down 8th Avenue, then toward the waterfront, where lights shimmered on the black water like tiny broken promises. And then he saw it, her car. Parked outside a boutique hotel. He sat there for a long time, engine running, watching the entrance. At 9:12, she appeared. Laughing. Head tilted back, rain dripping from her hair, her hand brushing the arm of a man he'd never seen, tall, clean-cut, confident. She looked lighter, freer, alive in a way she hadn't been with him in months. The man leaned in. She didn't pull away. The kiss was soft, familiar. Daniel felt something inside him shatter quietly, not an explosion, but a collapse, like a building giving way to its own weight. He didn't move. Didn't honk, didn't yell, didn't confront. He just watched them disappear into the hotel. Then, slowly, he drove home, the takeout untouched, the rain finally stopping. The next morning, Emily acted as though nothing had happened. She smiled faintly, wore a turtleneck that covered the faint red mark on her neck, and hummed while she made coffee. Daniel sat across from her, silent. He wanted to ask. But instead, he said, "You're working late again?" She looked at him, finally meeting his eyes. "Yeah. It's been crazy lately." He nodded, smiling faintly. "I bet." Over the next week, Daniel became two people, the husband she knew, and the man watching her from behind polite smiles. He began to track the small details, her routes, her excuses, her hours. He wasn't angry yet. He was curious, a terrible, hollow kind of curiosity that kept him awake at night. He found her lover's name on a business card she'd accidentally dropped in the laundry, Evan Torres, creative director. He looked him up online, smooth, confident, with the kind of face that sold charm like it was currency. Single. Of course. Daniel stared at the man's LinkedIn photo for a long time. He wasn't special. He was just new. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's quiet investigation grew darker. He followed them once, not to confront, just to know. He watched them from across the street at a small wine bar in Capitol Hill, her hand resting on Evan's thigh beneath the table, her laughter spilling into the night. It wasn't rage that filled him then. It was grief. Grief for the version of Emily he'd loved, the girl from college who used to sketch him while he studied, the woman who cried when their first apartment flooded, the partner who promised forever on a hill overlooking Lake Union. That woman was gone. And the one across the street didn't even look like her anymore. The breaking point came 2 nights later. He came home early, pretending to be sick. Her car wasn't there. Her phone charger was missing. He sat in the dark, waiting. At 11:24, the sound of tires on gravel. Then the front door. Emily entered quietly, hair messy, eyes tired. She froze when she saw him. "You're home," she said softly. "I am," Daniel replied. "You weren't." A silence thickened between them, not a pause, but a chasm. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Daniel, I..." "Don't," he said. "Don't lie. Not tonight." Her face crumpled slightly, then hardened. "You were spying on me." "I was noticing," he said. "Because you stopped letting me in." She exhaled, trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen." He laughed, low and hollow. "They never do." What followed wasn't a fight, it was an unraveling. Words became knives, tears became confessions. She said she'd felt empty, unseen, tired of being safe. He said she destroyed something that couldn't be rebuilt. At one point, she whispered, "I still love you." And he replied, "Then why does it feel like you killed me?" Emily moved out 3 days later. Seattle kept raining. Daniel packed her things quietly, box by box, until the house no longer smelled like her perfume. He didn't tell his friends. Didn't tell his family. He just existed, working through the motions of a life that no longer fit. But one night, 2 months later, she came back. It was late, 10:45. She stood on the porch, soaked in rain, shivering. "Can we talk?" she asked. He hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in silence for a long time. She told him Evan had left her. That it hadn't meant what she thought it did. That she'd made the worst mistake of her life. Daniel listened. Then he smiled, small, sad, distant. "Emily," he said softly. "You're 2 months too late." The next morning, he filed for divorce. Not out of spite, but survival. Seattle's rain finally broke that week, clear skies for the first time in months. He walked along the waterfront, hands in pockets, watching sunlight shimmer on the bay. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel free. He just felt awake. And sometimes, in the quiet between storms, that was enough.